You're absolutely right. It's really a three-body problem, right? You're trying to balance your job, your personal life, and then the academic responsibilities, like what you have to do for the master's degree.
I was going to self-sponsor the rest because it's my own intention. But they ended up coming back. They saw the value coming out of the MBA program. And one good day they called me and said, "Chan, we decided to fully sponsor." I was like, wow. In addition to pay rise and everything, you can also apply what you're learning, especially in an MBA, in your current work, and your managers and the peers will obviously be able to notice the difference.
Welcome to another episode of Our Tech Chronicles. It's episode number 27. Today, we are going to talk about grad school game plan. Especially in the age of AI and automation, many of us are asking the tough question, how do I stay relevant when the job can be eliminated by AI? Traditionally, master's degree has been considered to be reliable and an income booster, at the same time adding a lot of stress to yourself, your family, and your work. So today we are going to talk about all of the above. Thank you for tuning in, and let's get started.
Before we get started, I want to ask you guys a question. What's your go-to survival snack during finals? Be honest. No judgment zone, okay?
Mine is salted green beans, to be precise.
Nice.
For me, it's a Cliff protein bar and coffee.
Man, you guys are all healthy. Mine is M&Ms. That's a
Good
good
one.
one. Cool. Maybe we start with why consider grad school for upskilling while working?
Yeah, I think there are a number of reasons. Like traditionally, somebody does a master's degree because you have expanded role that you want to pursue, and some people see grad school as a way of increasing income. Like it there's a lot of research that say your income can boost by 10 to 15% if you have a master's degree. At the same time, some of specialized jobs, like when they are even advertised, employers are seeking that you actually have an advanced degree, like especially in areas like data sciences, machine learning, AI. They want to make sure that you are really specialized in those areas. I think those are the some of the reasons. What do you guys think?
I think lately the grad school has gotten a little bit of negative rapport saying that, you don't need to go to grad school to learn or get a higher pay. While I agree for most part, I think grad school gives a great foundation and a framework to learn so many things at the same time and apply in a singular way. So usually, a lot of programs put a lot of thought in creating a formal structure where you learn the right way and apply or bring them all together in a capstone project. I cannot do that on my own if I'm learning bits and pieces from other areas because I need to figure out how to put it together. So my reasons are, if you're looking for a formal way and disciplined way to learn many things at once, grad school actually gives you that.
100% agree with you. I mean, one can argue that you can learn the same thing while working without going to grad school. But what grad school gives you is an accelerated path to that learning. Otherwise, your experience takes time to get you to that point, right? It's a formal, structured way to accelerate your learning on a particular subject matter or whatever. The second value in grad school, I would say, and I'd love to hear thoughts on that, is also the network that you build, right? These are the next level leaders in the industry, and you're building close connections with them, going through the grind, doing projects late nights, what, and then when you become that next level leader, you have a network already to tap into. Would you agree with me on that?
Yeah, I think so. That's a very good point. However, part of that goes into what kind of grad school you go to. So, that defines the kind of people you're going to network with. And you have multiple choices out there. I think networking is like one of the reasons why you want to do that. But that might also mean like you might have to be physically in a college because some of these degrees are part-time. And when you do part-time master's degrees, like you're not going to see the same people like again and again in different classes because you take it at your own pace. Where you really build a bonding is like if you join one of these more structured master's program with some on-site interaction, not just online. That's where you can build those networks.
I agree, Asanka. And Roshan, while that was the notion some time ago with the advent of Zoom and virtual setting, that network aspect has kind of diminished in today's world, unfortunately. But it is still there for something like executive MBA, where you basically travel and do part time, like on site. I think those things still have that networking value. But being personally in one of the virtual, grad programs, I don't get to interact as much, but I'm creating some network to be fair, but all through virtual. I don't know if you will value the same way both, but that's what I see.
That's fair.
And also, like, I mean, the other thing is like if you are a person who's really like learning new things, and if there's something you're passionate about, and if you want to learn it in a very structured way, to Sean's point, and want to learn from the best in the industry, that could be another reason why you want to do advanced degree, like, and also like after you've done your graduate, like undergrads, then you work for a certain period of time, and then you might naturally become a leader in organization. And then if your undergrad is in a non-management, like very technical degree, you're not going to have understanding of like organization behavior, how to motivate people, how to effectively communicate, how to interact with people, how does marketing work. So some of these masters in like MBA especially will help.
And also, one more thing to add to that is sometimes it's just personal gratification, right? Some people, want to do this for accomplishment for themselves. Because I must add, like, this whole thing is a very enjoyable journey and the feeling of accomplishment, like you running a marathon. So I totally get that too.
And another point is like the big difference between upskilling through some professional certificate versus doing a formal master's degree. You can learn both ways. The difference in master's degree is I would consider that like a long-term investment, right? It's not like a short-term thing because your career could change, like your organization can change. And if you have a master's degree, that's something you can showcase and say, I actually have a master's in this area or this discipline, and that gives you that added value for the long term. So maybe we should go to the next topic. Doing a master's sounds like a great idea. Some of us have done a master's degree or some upskilling. You do this while you're working, right? So it's juggling number of things, and your life situation can be very different. It could be have a family, you could be having kids, you might have a work that is really high pressure. You could be already be working 40, 50 hours. How do you manage all this? How do you juggle different things?
It is a long commitment that we really need to think about before venturing in, because otherwise we'll do a haphazard work on both sides. At least for me, it starts with a honest conversation with your life partner as well as your work partner, who's your manager. So basically, it is important to get some confirmation before we engage in this program. Like, for example, I worked with my manager and said, okay, I'm going to do this. I may need to carve out some time. And thankfully, my manager was very understanding. He was proud that I was going to take that up. And at the same time, with my wife, that's also very important, because when you ask your partner about engaging in a program, we put them in a difficult position, because if they deny, that's like, you don't care about me, like my progress. At the same time, if they agree, they are going to sacrifice that time for you, right? So in that aspect, it is our responsibility. If we're going to take it up, we have to give something extra at home. So I told my wife, I'll take care of dinner, I'll take care of, certain things in the house. And that's kind of the negotiation we have to do to be a good citizen in the house. What are some of the others?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's really a three-body problem, right?
That's right. That's a
I
good
mean,
analogy.
yeah, you're trying to balance your job, your personal life, and then the academic responsibilities, like what you have to do for the master's degree. And if you don't balance them properly, it could really manifest into a lot of stress. And not only for yourself, but also it could impact your work, impact your family life, especially like if you are a software engineer or even like some of the very technical roles. You're already working weekends, you're already working the weekdays. Like, how do you really balance all these three? I think the first thing is that you also need to understand what your limitations are. If you are a perfectionist, like you want to do everything to the perfection, you need to rethink. Right? Sometimes, you have to be really pragmatic when it's come to doing a master's degree while you're working. And then it's also important, like, you need to learn to set your boundaries. You can't expect to have the same kind of lifestyle you used to have once you start the master's degree, right? You might have to cut down on some of your partying, some of your socializations, because you have to really prioritize where do you want to spend that limited time you have, and having some of those conversations with like your family, with your close friends, to say, hey guys, I'm going to start this, I might not be available for everything, like in turn, like, make sure that you get the support from your family and the friends.
And keep an eye on your health too, because that's another fourth body we need to think about. That's our own. That kind of hit me back sometimes, because especially when you are stuck at work where you have to put in extra hours anyway, then on top of that you have to focus on your assignments. Oh, that's another thing I forgot to mention earlier. The commitment is not just your live sessions. You have to think about assignment work. Almost like I carved out about 20 hours of my week to take care of these research and assignments, team communications. I'm actually spending 15 to 20 hours a week.
How do you divide your time actually, Shan? Is it during the week only, or does it spill over into the weekend as well?
I try to avoid weekends, but I've managed to carve out some time during work hours. So my manager knows, I've carved out 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. I said I have to join a team call. So he fully understands that. I just absolutely spend that 1 hour to work on my assignments and complete the weekly checklist. And there are times I missed it and then had to suffer later because I had to find that 1 hour somewhere else. But otherwise, the live sessions are in the evening. Also, we are working in a global environment, right? Because depending on the team members you get in the program, some of them might be in the Middle East or in Australia. So it's extremely hard to find a time that works for all of us. So that's another challenge.
Right, that's a very good point. And also, if you have a choice in picking the classes, right, you have to pick the right mix for the semester. Like, you don't want to be picking the hardest one in the same semester. You should try to balance them out. Another thing that worked for me is like pick your hours. Like, sometimes the best hours is like when everybody's asleep, like early hours or late hours, like, you're not intruding on others. And another small tip, there's a lot of learning, like in terms of the tools, because every organization use like different tools like Canvas, that is like where to find the material, how to do that, how to post the assignments. Most of these master's degrees, like there are like chat groups, so rely on people to get tips, help, to get yourself up to speed. You will often find there are going to be few individuals who are willing to have a quick meeting with you to bring you up to speed. People would go out of the way to help you. So use that help. You don't have to suffer yourself to, understand everything, especially if it is not a very structured program like a part-time, like which I did.
Sadly, I don't have a lot to add to this because my master's program was a full-time program.
That's another choice, right? So I'm curious to ask you, Roshan, at some point, like you decided, hey, I want to actually do my master's degree full time, right? So that's a choice. Like, you don't want to, sacrifice your work and family life and all that, juggle all that at the same time. Instead, I'm going to focus. I'm going to do my master's degree, complete it, and then, get back to workforce. So what was it like?
Yeah, it was, I guess I was a lot younger, right? And I worked a few years in industry and then decided this is something that I want for myself. And at that point, I knew that I was not disciplined enough to be able to handle, at least at that time in my life, work and studies. One or the other is going to suffer. And so I made the choice that, hey, I'm going to take a sabbatical from work and spend 1.5 years on this masters and then come back. That was my thinking behind that. I guess knowing yourself, right?
Absolutely. I think that's one of the good choices as well. If you can afford to do that, that's the best way to do it, because that way you're fully invested in spending your time in learning. Let's move on to the next topic. Like, how do you pick the right focus area or the program that you want to align your studies to your career goals?
Maybe I'll start first. Of course, finance is the one of the biggest items, at least in my opinion. Like, I looked at all the recognized colleges, because you don't want to be picking something that is not recognized if you're only doing it for your own personal gratification. Even so, you would probably want a reputable college. So I looked at all that. I mean, I have been looking for one for many years, so I took time. And also, there is a topic that I wanted to mention is, in the US, if you're in the US, every company has a tax benefit to offer to the employee up to the amount of $5,250. So you can look it up, you can Google it. So this is a benefit that almost every employee in the US have. They are not advertised. So keep that in mind. You can take any program like courses, as long as it's related to your work, you can put that claim for that amount. So that's one thing. And also having the conversation with the company about the sponsorship. In my case, I didn't. I was only hoping to partially get sponsorship of that 5,000 grand from the company, and I was going to self sponsor the rest because it's my own intention. But they ended up coming back. They saw the value coming out of the MBA program. One good day, they called me and said, "Sean, we decided to fully sponsor." I was like, "Wow!" So let's talk about that too, because in addition to pay rise and everything, you can also apply what you're learning, especially in an MBA, in your current work, and your managers and the peers will obviously be able to notice the difference. That's how good the program should be. So that's what the finance is one. The other one that I looked at is the program structure and the flexibility. The reason I picked the one that I picked is that it's minimum 2 years. Anything below that, I would be questioning the credibility of the college for an MBA. But though minimum is 2 years, I have the option to stretch it all the way to 6 years if I missed any semester. So I thought, okay, that's a great flexibility for me to have. And then also looking at live session timing. To Asanka's point, there are communities out there. One I use is Reddit. So a lot of students talk about it. So that they had a morning session and an evening session. So if I had some commitment in the evening, I have the choice to join in the morning. So a lot of topics like that. Any other, Asanka?
I think you covered most of it, Sean. One like a slightly different aspect. Don't do a master's program for the sake of doing a master's program. I mean, you don't want to. Some people have the concept that, hey, I want to have these three letters, MBA, MSc, in my resume. That should not be the intention. The intention should be what you outline. Why am I doing a master's program? It should be a strategic decision. Even if your company is sponsoring you are investing lots of your time. You're sacrificing time that you can spend with your family. Family sacrificing for you. So it's a very strategic and impactful decision. So make sure you are using that time wisely to further your career. And when it's come to master's degree, like there's MBA, which kind of provide you a general management education, versus there are masters in science programs that provides you advanced research or science kind of education. So you have to pick which one is right for you. And then also don't go for the program that is cheapest. I think you should go for the something that is reputed. It comes down to who's teaching the classes. It's not even the curriculum. Like if you're interacting with renowned professors who have written books, not to say just in the master's class, but who have actually written popular books or who have come up with theories.
Absolutely, Asanka. And one other thing that attracted me is how they organized it in such a way the topics are current. So basically, that's important to go look at the curriculum. The one I looked at is learning a topic like risk management at the at the earliest stage, and then continuing the same in every semester in some way or form that progressively brings complex problems to. So I like that part of it. So you basically learn something and then you keep applying every semester as a sub item in your capstone. I thought that was very valuable.
Can we talk a little bit about, so MBA is very targeted and focused, right? Asanka, you mentioned for like an MSc, there's so many different focus areas. What should someone consider when picking a focus area, right? Maybe their interests are aligned somewhere else versus to what they're doing in their current work. Like that could be a scenario, but what can we talk about that a bit?
Great question, Roshan. The reason why I picked the MBA is because I wanted to upskill myself in the entrepreneurial world, like running a business. If you're ever thinking of starting up a company, I highly recommend doing an MBA because you learn so many things like the global markets, finance, how to fund your endeavor, some things that I've never knew before. So that's the reason I picked MBA. But at the same time, if you are in the industry vertical and you want to hone in on becoming a leader in that space and you want to stay in the corporate world, probably masters in science might be a good one.
That's a really good point, Sean, right? I mean, especially if you are a software engineer, you are in an advantageous position. You can actually build a product end to end by yourself. However, if you want to convert that into a successful business, the skills that you need, you're going to get it from an MBA. That's a really valid point. And Roshan, to your question, I think the difference in MSc is like if you can learn advanced skill by doing a professional certificate, right? You can self learn, but if you really want to go deep into something, like especially some of this area where you need some of the industry experts, like some of those research professors teaching you, I think those are the areas where you want to do MSc, like AI or machine learning, data sciences. Like you want to really have a deep understanding of those topics. That's where you need to do a master's.
I think for me, and I think it's still relevant, right? So I did my master's, what, maybe 20 years ago, right? And a lot of the things that we learned then are outdated now. Fact of the matter, right? But I think that the takeaway for me from that program was it taught me to learn, to do research, to build a hypothesis, and then build a thesis around that and present my idea. And that's very relevant even today with the work we do, right? That teaches you to think. And that is what I walked away from my program, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think I had a similar situation. I did my MBA maybe 20 years ago, but about 3 years ago, I did a graduate certificate. Those are all graduate level classes to kind of refresh myself to see what has changed. Surprisingly, some of the things have not changed, like some of the fundamental management principles, they haven't really changed. But then there are new theories around like lean product management, software development, how we develop software has changed. Like there's a lot of new things that you can learn, but you can also learn these things through some of the professional certificates. But what I found by doing advanced level classes is that I was able to go to a next level of details. There's a lot of reinforcement through assignments, working with other team members, and also like working across the globe. Like there were people from Australia, Singapore, Middle East, Europe, getting perspective from different individuals. That was the biggest learning, I would say.
Yeah, and also to add, like one other reason why MBA is good for you, audience, is that it forces you to learn things that you wouldn't learn otherwise. For example, I would never learn legal. I would never go out and learn my own, corporate finance. Those are like things I hate. But MBA makes you learn them in a smaller dose and makes you understand why we do that. So I found that pretty interesting. And also, I wouldn't recommend if you are early in the career, there is really no benefit in doing an MBA when you are just getting into corporate environment. It's really ideally suited for someone who has been there and understand all the pain points and truly want to learn MBA because they wanted to go up the ladder.
I have a rule of thumb for that. If you're an engineer, like you spend, depending on type of college, like 3 or 4 years in the college, spend equal amount of time working before you think about MBA. Because you have to first sharpen what you learned. Over a course of period, you can decide whether you want to go down the management track or do you want to advance your skills by doing another Master of Science degree, or maybe you don't need either of those.
I like what you just said, Asank, right? I know I said stuff that I learned 20 years ago is outdated now, but I think I should have clarified that. Some of the stuff are outdated, but some of the raw fundamentals still apply, right? For distributed systems like Paxos, Raft, consensus algorithms, gossip protocols, things that we take for granted now, you actually know how it works. And when something goes wrong, to be able to get into the details, the nuts and bolts of actually what's going on to try and diagnose the problem, it helps to know how this thing is built. And there's a lot of value in that, I think. And you get that when you go deeper in a particular subject domain.
Totally.
Yeah, just remembering all these geeky algorithms we did back in the day.
It's very interesting. In my cohort, I see students who have just came out of the bachelor's degree, who are just they wanted to just be done with it. So I think those students, some they I'm pretty sure they'll pass the MBA, but I don't know how valuable it is going to be, whether they'll be shooting their own foot with it, because in the industry, like as a hiring manager, I'll be thinking twice if I kind of correlate the age and the MBA together. I don't know how you guys
Yeah.
perceive that, but at the same time, I see people who are retirees in the MBA. It's quite fascinating to talk to some of them, because they do it for the personal gratification. They just wanted to learn new things, and they are the most pleasant people to work with.
See, I will support doing a MSc right after undergrad, especially if you do your undergrad degree and then you are not able to land on a job that you like immediately. Maybe a good way to spend time is advance your skills by doing MSc. But when it's come to MBA, I agree. Like MBA is really for management. Like when you want to lead people, lead organizations, that's when you need an MBA.
And in different scenarios too, right? So like what Sean mentioned, his particular focus area was entrepreneurial, starting a business. Whereas some people are like, okay, mid-level managers, they want to crack that ceiling to go into upper management, right? And then there's upper management who want to be like the C-suite, right? And so different people have different motivations on why they want to do that MBA. And so everything comes down to having some experience first to lean on
Exactly.
and learn what worked and learn better techniques to apply them and try things differently next time, I guess, right?
Right. And I personally see that now that I'm doing the MBA, I now know why we had to go through some painful things as a manager. Like I know how the budgeting works, and capitalization. Of course, I knew a little bit by reading here and there, but this gives you the whole meal, right? Your capitalization, legal, corporate finance, and risk management. And one of the most important part is the teaming aspect, where they talk about emotional EQ and IQ, how to manage a difficult situation. I enjoy those kind of sessions, because we can actually play it out in a cohort where you can learn things online too, and AI. It's not the same.
Maybe moving on to a different topic, right? Now that both of you guys have done this or doing it right now, what are tips we can share with our audience, like in terms of managing time, perhaps? Even you said global teams in your cohort doing assignments, like what has worked for you, what hasn't worked, so that you could do it differently. What can we share?
Yeah, I think we kind of sprinkled tips and tricks, along the way. But I wanted to reiterate: think about the allowance that you have. That you should absolutely take advantage of it if you are working in the US. And the other area is time management. We covered that some time ago, work-life balance. But the other areas is when you're learning something, and if you identify something that you can apply to work, just take a note of it. I use OneNote for capturing, hey, this is something I can apply at my current job, and vice versa. If I have a question, then write it down and then ask the professor. We have that privilege. So I would say that, and also recurring meetings in your calendar. Oh my God, Google Calendar is my lifesaver. Put the reminders there for saying, hey, you need to research this topic. What are some of yours, Asanka?
Yeah, I think I mentioned some of those. One of the things, maybe not a tip, one thing I realize is I don't have the same level of energy and patience like I used to sit down and study in a classroom setting. Like it's really, really tough. So it's something that you need to cultivate. And then other thing is for me, like especially with graduate classes I took, there were lots of assignments, and I took it before ChatGPT, so I couldn't get the help of the timely completion. Like, don't accumulate assignments; it's gonna come back and bite you in a really bad way. And then you have to reach out to your professor and say, "Hey, can I get extra time?" And then you have another class, and then you lose track of everything. So be on top of it, get it done. Easier said than done, especially if you are juggling multiple things. So be ready. And I think foundationally, do something you're passionate about. Otherwise, like you're going to struggle.
A quick question on that is it so back in my time, it was important to also build a good rapport with your professors, right? Because they are the ones who, like, projects come their way and then they are able to give you first dibs on interesting stuff. Is it still the case?
Yes. One of the underrated benefit of doing these kind of programs is the ability to have or improve your public speaking also. Because in my session I have like over 100 live session going on with the professor, and most of them are afraid to lift their hands to answer questions. I absolutely embrace that. In fact, I might be a pain to my cohort when I think about it. It's like I want to use that platform to get that fear out of myself. But that way you basically create a good rapport with your professor, different professors and learning facilitators that you come across, and it's important to build a rapport there. But yeah, Roshan, absolutely. Like, you not only can ask them during office hours your questions, you can also submit emails or tickets to get their perspective. They are more than welcome. Again, depending on which program you're doing.
I mean, for me, the experience was like mixed because it was a part-time, graduate certificate. I took one class. Believe it or not, I never saw the professor because it's a mandatory class. Principles in finance. I think colleges are also trying to scale up, right? They're trying to see how they can scale up. And then in all the other classes, we had a professor. Office hours were mostly with the teaching assistants, right? And I think, in fact, they actually grade your papers. It's not the professor because, they are teaching so many classes these days. Things have changed a lot since 20 years ago.
And in my case, I even connected them on LinkedIn. Some of them actually welcome those connections. So you have a lifelong kind of coach when you walk away from these programs.
Another tip from my time, and tell me whether it's still relevant, was projects like go all in. Don't, there are two ways to do projects, right? There are people who actually are passengers, truth of the matter, right? There are people who are passengers, and there are some people who drive it. Be the driver, because that is like a real world example of running something that you can apply when you go into the workplace. If you're a passenger, you're not making the most of the program. I'm guessing it's probably the same, right?
You miss one person there. There's basically leaders, passengers, and then there's dead weight. I faced all of them in my team. Those are the worst. Like, you have to, because you suffer as a team.
I would say, like, just don't be the dead weight.
Cool. Maybe we can wrap it up there, right? This is fun learning from both of you. Hopefully, this advice is useful for everyone considering doing studies while working, and it'll help them pick the right focus area that will further their career. Hopefully, there's monetary benefits as well. We also gave tons of tips that work from balancing your family life, your work life, your physical well-being, right? Mental well-being, all of that. What else? We talked about, why it's important to upskill yourself. And then there are so many different scenarios there, right? Whether you want to start a business or move on. All right, with that said, see you all next time.
See ya. Bye.